I'm going to ask my husband for a divorce during our therapy session. My husband, 28M, and I, 28F, have been together for 7 years and married for 2. Just before our marriage, my husband began to develop an alcohol dependency that has progressively worsened over time and came to a breaking point this past month. Around a month ago, my husband came home obviously drunk, which upset me given his history and his previous commitment to sobriety since October. It turns out that wasn't actually the case. I know I should have waited until the next day to address the issue instead of confronting him in the moment, but I was so angry about the deception and the fact that he had clearly driven home drunk that I yelled at him. Things became pretty heated while I was trying to get him into bed. At one point, he charged at me and threatened to hurt himself. Eventually, I felt I had no choice but to call 911, which he obviously heard. In response, he punched a hole in our wall and another hole through one of our bathroom doors out of fear and anger due to childhood trauma involving police coming to his home. He was arrested and charged, and I have been staying with my parents ever since. He had his initial hearing this past Monday, and I attended. Today, I needed to stop by our house to grab a few things, so I texted him to let him know. After waiting for hours without any confirmation, he normally leaves if I need to come over. I stopped by anyway. I discovered the house was completely unkempt. There was a strong smell of weed throughout the house, and ashtrays were everywhere. He has a history of smoking weed, and in my opinion, he heavily overindulges. He has also been unemployed since February after leaving a toxic work environment, and he has not been actively looking for another job to replace his lost income. As far as I know, he's mostly been playing video games, hanging out with friends, or taking trips on his motorcycle, which it looked like he had done today. This has been a major point of contention between us, to the point where he accused me of financial abuse simply because I asked him to get any jobs so I wouldn't be the only one paying the bills. I want to be there for him, and I want him to get sober and healthy again. But his obvious lack of effort to truly get better has drained away whatever romantic love I had left for him. We have couples therapy on Friday, and I'm planning to tell him then that I want a divorce. The problem is that he often becomes hostile toward me during our sessions and tends to spend the entire appointment arguing with our therapist. I'm not sure how to deliver this news during therapy. How can I tell my husband I want a divorce during our therapy session? ETA, I was able to get in touch with our therapist, and we're going to come up with a plan today, including the possibility of moving tomorrow's appointment. My new concern is that my text yesterday about stopping by the house never actually went through. I haven't seen or heard from my husband since Monday, so I don't know where he is or whether he's safe. If the therapist isn't able to get in touch with him by tomorrow, we'll discuss requesting a welfare check and how to proceed depending on what happens. Mini update: my husband did show up for our therapy session, and I was able to tell him, with our therapist present, that I would be filing for divorce. I also brought a list of our assets and how I thought they should be divided so we could hopefully walk away from this as amicably as possible. He was obviously devastated, and so was I, but he admitted that he had seen this coming. He also made statements about harming himself, at which point our therapist suggested finishing the remainder of the session one-on-one with him. I agreed because I didn't want to stay there any longer. Considering everything, it went about as well as it possibly could have. I don't think he'll become violent toward me, but I'll still be taking precautions just in case. Update 1: I was also notified on Wednesday that he had been arrested again for fleeing an officer and misdemeanor bail jumping. This means he violated one of the conditions of his original bail, and I'm assuming it was the sobriety condition. It's become clear to me that while he regrets his actions every time something happens, he simply isn't ready to confront the problem or seek help. At this point, all I can do is grieve the relationship and move forward. Thank you for all of the kind words, the firm advice, and even some of the less than kind responses. I'm obviously struggling a lot right now and trying to process all of the emotions I'm feeling. I'm incredibly grateful for the support I've found here, as well as from my family and friends. I've been reminded that there's no shame in the choice I've made and that I truly did the right thing. If anything else happens, I'll come back and update this post. Otherwise, I just want to keep moving toward a future where I'm happy, healthy, and finally on the other side of all of this. Final update: I noticed there were a lot of update me comments on my previous posts, so I figured I'd feed the beast. Unfortunately, this isn't a very dramatic update, so sorry in advance if you were hoping for something especially wild or full of typical Reddit insanity. After dragging my feet for about a month, mostly because I was emotionally exhausted, I finally hired a lawyer. As of June 30th, my husband and I are officially separated, which means our divorce should be finalized sometime in late October or early November. Honestly, I feel like I'm on cloud 9. I recently earned a senior level promotion and a raise at work. I've started going back to the gym regularly and honestly look great. I have so much more energy for my hobbies and the other important relationships in my life. I've rediscovered my love of reading and have connected with more people who also enjoy spicy fantasy novels, something my husband used to make fun of me for. I can finally do what I want, whenever I want, without someone emotionally dragging me down or complaining every time I wanted to do something that made me happy. On a more dramatic note, a couple of weeks ago I noticed several $200 ATM withdrawals from our joint account, along with a $1,500 charge at a restaurant or catering business. I saw that the charges came from my husband's debit card and initially assumed it was fraud. So I contacted him and told him he needed to freeze his card. It turns out the charges were actually his. Apparently, he was trying to show a friend who was moving away a good time. Naturally, I couldn't help wondering where that kind of enthusiasm had been during the last few years of our relationship. He claimed he had meant to use his personal account instead, which I interpreted as him hoping I simply wouldn't notice thousands of dollars disappearing from our joint account. I told him he had a couple of weeks to replace every penny or I would be taking the issue directly to my lawyer, since moving large amounts of money during a divorce is a major problem. I received plenty of excuses about how sick he felt, how guilty he was, and what a terrible person he believed himself to be. I simply told him to replace the money and leave me alone. I'm almost completely certain alcohol was involved the night he decided to spend thousands of dollars on this so-called friend, which means he once again violated the conditions of his bail. Speaking of bail, the disorderly conduct case has now officially been closed. He pleaded no contest and paid a grand total of $67 in fines. I didn't attend the final hearing. Instead, I simply looked up the court records online. After all, why would I show up for a man who consistently failed to show up for me whenever I needed him? Anyway, I'm sure I sound a little snarky and bitter. Honestly, I think that's a good thing. Somewhere along the way, I lost myself. I'm incredibly happy that I've finally found myself again. I'd forgotten how much I actually liked the person I am after spending so much time with someone who had clearly stopped liking me. I don't think I'll have much else to update until the divorce is finalized. For now, though, thank you again to everyone who listened, offered advice, and wished me well. I appreciate it more than I could ever express through a Reddit post. And, as cliché as it sounds, I never expected these posts to reach so many people or even end up on YouTube. I'm incredibly grateful for all of the support and for everyone who shared their own stories with me. And for anyone who may be going through something similar and doesn't know what to do, please take it from me, get out. I promise life gets so much better. You don't have to stay with someone who constantly stifles your spark.